I have now unlocked and tested every XDefiant weapon in the preseason and will be ranking them on a tier list, giving my thoughts on all of the weapons in the game, which ones stand out as the best, and which ones maybe kind of suck. Now, here's a quick little insight into the game before I break down the actual tier for all the weapons. Some game modes, like the escort game mode, will do better for long-range weapons, like the snipers, and maybe even an LMG if you feel like it. And other maps, which are more close quarters, of course SMGs and shotguns are going to do better. So even though some weapons are higher tiered because they are overall better weapons, that doesn't mean lower tier weapons don't have a chance, depending on the game mode and map. Also, when it comes to pistols, honestly, they're all fine, they're all pretty good. Just for my opinion, choose the one that has the fastest movement speed, because you're going to want to switch to your pistol to run around faster. So the basic pistol is pretty good. There's also two meme weapons, and I don't know where to put them. The double barrel shotgun is extremely powerful, but it has 2 shots per round, very limited reserve ammo, but it's so strong, like really strong. And then you have the M44 sniper rifle. This thing is not even a one-shot body shot. There is a sniper that is. It's only a one-shot headshot, but it's so fun to use. It feels like you're kind of lacking damage and potential when you use this thing, but it is so fun, and you can have some crazy games with it. So I don't know where to rank these two, but with that in mind, let's start ranking every other weapon. So with that in mind, let's start at the bottom of the list and make our way all of the way to the very top. So starting up in C tier, yes, there's only C tier weapons because I think all of the other weapons are pretty decent, and it's really hard for me to kind of rank them any lower than this. We have the AA-12. It takes quite a lot of shots to eliminate a player, 3 or 4 per magazine, and you only get 8 per reload. Just feels a little bit inefficient when you have SMGs that can eliminate people faster and at longer ranges. It just doesn't feel like a very good option, especially when the other shotguns actually are pretty good. Next, we have the M60. This is the first LMG in C tier. It's okay, and the damage is actually pretty decent, matching some of the other assault rifles. However, it's clunky, it's slow, has slow reloads, the iron sights aren't great, so it's not really worth using. I think the LMGs in this game aren't really worth using, besides a rare exception, which we'll talk about later. And this is just because the movement speed on them is really slow, and they just don't really fit into what XDefiant feels like to me. I feel like the faster you move, the better. And yes, you can just switch to your pistol to move around faster, but that swap time to go back to the LMG is pretty slow. So I just feel like that's the reason why the M60 is in C tier. Same with the RPK. Now, the RPK for me was a little bit better, even though the damage on the RPK overall is slightly worse than the M60. It comes out at, I'd say like what, maybe like a 5% increase in damage on the M60 in terms of time to kill. But the RPK felt a little bit easier to use. It felt like a easier to use version of the AK. A larger mag, but a little bit less damage. And, of course, slower handling. Next, we move into B tier. First, we have the M16, the burst assault rifle. Now, this was pretty good. And in a couple bursts, you can knock down a player. Most of the time, it's going to end up being 3 bursts, though. And that is nice. But I always felt that it would have been easier for me to just have a full auto weapon. It's easier to track targets as they're moving around with full auto. For that reason, it just felt like the full auto assault rifles were better choices. Even though the burst one, I can't say it was bad, but the other assault rifles ended up working better for me. The M4 is next in B. The M4 is actually a really good assault rifle. It's very easy to use. The damage is pretty good. But if you take a look at the RPM and the actual damage per shot, it's less strong than the other weapons, and there are some other assault rifles, which we'll talk about later, which, even though they have far higher damage, they are still easy to control. So the M4 just has to be in B for that factor alone. And then we have the MP5. Now, once again, the MP5 is a decent option. It's an SMG that does a decent amount of damage, but it is unfortunately the lowest amount of damage for an SMG, and whilst it has better long range than some of the other options, like it does more damage at longer range than the Vector, it has less damage fall off than a Vector, but it's just not catching up in terms of pure damage output, and there's just better SMG options, really. And at the end of the day, if you're using an SMG, you kind of want to be up close anyway, right? Next, we have A tier, starting with, surprisingly, the M249. I know this sounds ridiculous. I first hated this thing until I realized the stats for it were pretty good. The damage, if you combine the RPM and the damage per shot, it has a faster time to kill than all of the assault rifles. Every last one, even the ACR, which a lot of people are saying is the best gun in the game. So, yeah, it's really powerful, and it has a 100-round mag, which means you're never really going to need to reload. But like we talked about before, it is super clunky to use, and that's kind of a pain. I mean, it just feels a bit boring to run around with an LMG, but I just can't deny the fact that the damage output on this thing is ridiculous. It's just so strong. So for that reason, we've put it in A tier. If you want to just shred through players and hold angles and just never really lose out on fights, the M249 is the one. It is surprisingly strong, and it will surprise you too once you get over the horrible iron sights and put on an optic. Okay, moving on. We have the SVD and MK. Both marksman weapons are basically neck and neck. Both A tier, both really good weapons, actually. 2 shots to kill a player. You can put a red dot on it, and it makes it really effective up close, long range, any distance. The thing is with XDefiant is most of the sightlines aren't really that long, to be honest, so there aren't really moments where you'd need to use an actual sniper, although we'll talk about the TAC 50 in a minute because that's pretty good. Just feels really good. A 2-shot kill weapon. You can put different optics on it and not stuck with a really long range one when there's very short sightlines in this game. So really good, really versatile, and pretty good handling despite it being a marksman weapon. So next we have the TAC 50. This is a one-shot body shot sniper. So even though, you know, it's a bit annoying to have to scope in, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun to just one-shot everything. And it feels like a strong sniper from old Call of Duty games. It's really decent, really strong, and I think a lot of people will like it. Next, we have the MDR. The MDR is one of the best assault rifles in the game. Now, it's pretty decent, pretty strong, very easy to use, and actually, in terms of DPS, time to kill, and all that stuff, it's just a little bit lower than the ACR and the AK. So that's why it's only in A tier. Speaking of the AK is also in A tier. Really good. It's actually the strongest assault rifle in the game. So it has the fastest time to kill, but it's a little bit harder to control than the other ARs. The other ARs are pretty easy, whilst the AK is just a little bit punchy. The visual recoil is a bit of a pain. So I personally feel like that tiny... we're talking like fractions of a percent here between the difference of time to kill for the AK and time to kill for the ACR, but the AK is horrible to use and the ACR isn't, so that's why the AK is A tier. Now, A tier is still good, but it's not as good as the ACR, which we'll get on to in a minute. And then we have the P90. The P90 doesn't have the fastest fire rate or fastest time to kill for an SMG, but it's a 50-round mag, and it has the same sort of long range potential as the MP5. Now, when I say long range, I mean up to like 20 meters. It's decent enough. So if you like the MP5 but want to have something that feels a little bit more meta, the P90 is actually a really good choice. The stats are there to back it up. Has a slightly faster fire rate than the MP5 and slightly better damage, which means overall the time to kill is just better. And it has a larger mag. I mean, how can you go wrong? It's really good. But not as good as the Vector. Now, I put the Vector in A+. This one may kind of be something you would disagree with. The trouble with the Vector is, right, it's actually the fastest time to kill weapon in the game, right? We're talking full auto weapons here. The fastest time to kill weapon in the game, and it's miles ahead of the other weapons. I'm talking like 1.5 times faster time to kill than the other SMGs and assault rifles. It's really fast at time to kill. However, it has a really short mag, right? And because it has such a fast fire rate, you empty that mag really fast. And the damage, long range, starts to fall off really badly, a lot worse than the other SMGs. So you literally have to be barrel stuffing people. Hip firing is a bad idea in this game as well. So you have to run up in people's faces, shoot them right in their face, And yes, you will win every single fight if you can hit your shots with this thing because the damage is that good. However, it's really hard to do that. So that's why it's not S tier, because you're not going to be doing that all the time because it's really hard to use with that massively fast fire rate. So now we move on to S tier. The first S tier weapon is the MP7. Now, whilst this weapon doesn't have nearly enough time to kill as the Vector, or it doesn't have as fast time to kill as the Vector, I should say, it's still much better than all of the other SMGs, and the added benefit is the base version of it has 35 rounds per mag, as opposed to the 30 round on the MP5 and the 25 round on the Vector. So it's a more versatile SMG, the most versatile SMG, because the damage is higher than the P90s, the time to kill is faster than the P90s, it's faster than the MP5, it's lower than the Vector, but it has a much larger mag, so it's easier to use. And also the damage fall off isn't as bad as it is with the Vector, so you have a little bit of slightly longer range, up to about 20 meters with this thing. So most versatile SMG that you're going to be one-clipping people with, no problem. Really strong weapon that you can't go wrong with at all skill levels. And then finally, we have, oh no, there's two more actually. We have the ACR next. The ACR is the strongest assault rifle in terms of damage besides the AK. But once again, let me just explain this. The DPS of the ACR is like 1% or maybe 0.1% slower than the AK. So yeah, ACR is just so much easier to use. It feels nice. It's really easy to control. The visual recoil isn't bad. It's fun. It's strong. Best weapon in the game. Most versatile in every element because there's no massive damage fall off. So you can use it at long range. You can use it at short range. Everything the ACR is good at. So if you feel like the MP7 just doesn't quite have enough range, then the ACR is for you. There's one more weapon though. This weapon really surprised me, and you may think differently, but the M870 shotgun is so strong. It has some weird spread that may make you feel like it's a bad weapon, but as long as every time you fire, you're standing still when you fire, or not sprinting, you will do insane amount of damage. You do have to be up close, but this thing one-shots people all over the place. And all you have to do to make sure you are one-shotting is 1, do not jump, and 2, let go of sprint. So you need to turn off auto sprint for this. You need to stop sprinting every time you shoot this thing, otherwise the spread goes all over the place. That's all you need to do, and then this weapon devastates people. So that's it. Every weapon in XDefiant ranked based on my experience. Let me know what you think and what's your favorite weapon, and does it match up with this list? Let me know, and I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!